Namaskar. Welcome to this session. We have been discussing the marvelous topic of the esoteric aspects of human embodiment, and therein I refer to Laghu Rudra Nyasa, which beautifully describes the esoteric aspects of human embodiment. That means the exoteric parts of the body have esoteric purport, and that is what the passage of Krishna Yajurveda mentions. So we will try to have a look into that passage. In the generative organ, there is that four-faced Brahma, and in the feet part, it is Vishnu. And in the heart region, it is Shiva. Then in the Bayendriya, it is Indra. In the Kantha region, the Vasudevatas. In the eyes, it is Chandra Surya. In the ears, it is Ashwini. Murdha, it is Aditya. Shirasi, Mahadeva. In the crown of the head, Vamadeva. In the buttocks part, it is Pinaki. And in the Purata part, it is Shuli. Shiva Shankara, both reside in the back parts. And the Vayu all over. And Agni in the tongue. And this is how various deities are said to be residing in the exoteric parts of human embodiment. So, this is the mapping that the wisdom of the Lord has done to understand the human embodiment, and the Adidaivic aspect has been highlighted there. So, anyway, much can be said about the human embodiment. I have already dealt with it in the last session. So now we are going to understand. In the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali mentions some of the locations which have great importance for Samadhi and yogic processes. So, after having seen the sutra, Nabhi Chakre Kayavyuha jnanam, he next mentions how the yogi can overcome the impulse of thirst and hunger by a sutra, kanthakupeshutpipasa nivrutti. Kanthakupa means the cavity of the throat. It is like a well. The throat part above the chest and below the mouth, we have the throat cavity, and the throat cavity is oblong and it's like a well. So that's why it is called Kanthakupa. Kupa means well. And by Samyama on the Kanthakupa, Patanjali says that one can overcome the thirst and hunger. Now, it can be understood that one of the major distractors or the antagonizers of a Samadhi process is these natural calls of hunger and thirst. And the natural phenomenon such as coughing, belching, yawning, sneezing, these are all natural things. And in Samadhi, these would be great distractors. And the thirst and hunger gets a very prominent place because you should recall that Samadhi is not state of couple of seconds or couple of minutes, as has been discussed while dealing with Samadhi. Samadhi is a long duration state, not as it is believed to be a couple of minutes. And that is not at all a yogic Samadhi which lasts for a couple of minutes. It would be consuming days and days and days and weeks and weeks and weeks and months and months and months and years. Then, therefore, one can understand easily how the thirst and hunger, which are so natural calls, could be distractors. And therefore, this pipasa nivrutti is so important. Shudha pipasa. Shudha means hunger and pipasa means thirst. So, our calls for hunger and thirst are quite frequent. In a day's time, we cannot restrain them. In 24 hours, we cannot be restraining thirst and hunger. Whereas when it comes to Samadhi, as you are aware that it is a long duration state, and therefore the shudha pipasa, the hunger and thirst, cannot be coming to surface and prove to be distractors. So therefore this pipasa nivrutti is very important in yogic pursuit when it comes to levels of Samadhi. And therefore Patanjali mentions kanthakupeshutpipasa nivrutti. By Samyama on the kanthakupa, the yogi attains this conquest over natural calls in the form of thirst and hunger. Now Vyasa starts describing what is this kanthakupa. Jivvayam adhastat tantuhu, tato adhastat kantaha, tato adhastat kupaha. So if you go to the root of the tongue, which starts from the throat end of the mouth, there is the throat, that's called tantu. So if you go beyond the tongue, you come to the throat cavity, and that's called tantu. And below the throat you get gullet, and that is kantha. And below the gullet is that well, that cavity in the shape of well. Tatra samyamat kshutpipase na badete. So by samyama on that, the kshudha pipasa or the thirst and hunger won't bother the yogi. So this siddhi is mentioning something that is of the nature of kshutpipasa nivrutti. And that is the sutra number 30. So as I said, the shariram, human body, is pranashrita, prananvita. It is dependent on prana, the vital life force, and it is also prananvita. That means it is permeated by prana. It is permeated by that vital life force. It is dependent as well as permeated by the life force called prana. And as long as the prana is there in the embodiment, shudha pipasa cannot be gotten rid of. The thirst and hunger would be there for all living embodiments. There is no living embodiment having no thirst and no hunger. And we understand how discomforting is when the thirst and hunger are not quenched. If you are hungry and you are not allowed the food to be ingested, you can understand the discomfort that would come in. So also when you are thirsty, and if you are not given the water to consume, then you know how discomforting is that. So we almost are like fish out of waters because of hunger and thirst impulses. Moreover, our composure is totally devastated by thirst and hunger. When the thirst and hunger is rampant and making a lot of noise in us, we can certainly lose our composure. You cannot be composed with the strong calls of thirst and hunger. So we know what the hunger and thirst is. And therefore it is important for a yogi in his pursuit of Samadhi to be managing this by a kind of conquest. So after all, yogi is karma viveka, dharma viveka, papa punya viveka, sadasad viveka, yogya viveka. So all kinds of discriminations are of great importance in yoga. So karma viveka means the discrimination of do's and don'ts. Then dharma viveka means the discrimination of dharma and adharma, and then discarding adharma and adhering to dharma. So also discarding akarma and embracing karma. So also punya viveka. So if you look at the ethos of yogi's life, all these discriminations or viveka are very, very important. So punya viveka. Apunya to be discarded and punya to be embraced. Sadasad viveka. Asad to be discarded and sat to be embraced. Yogya viveka. That is the discrimination between the proper and improper. So all these vivekas, all these discriminations are of great importance in the very ethos of yoga. So this viveka scores enormous importance. And for this viveka, we need to have collection of certain guna sampada. Certain qualities, certain merits are to be collected in order to have this qualification for discrimination. So we have to collect all the guna sampada, which is best described in Daivasura Sampatti Vibhaga Yoga Bhagavad Gita 16th chapter. The divine dispositions are so important to be inculcated, collected, nurtured, and stacked up. But even if you have all these qualities sumptuously, we know how we are devastated with a strong call of thirst and hunger. All these discriminations get eclipsed with a strong call of hunger and thirst. So the thirst and hunger, which are so natural to any biological life, they really make us wind up guna sampada and go for quenching the thirst and hunger. That strong is the shudha pipasa. So once the shudha pipasa are having their cacophony, our shubha samskars get eclipsed. Our shubha vichaara get eclipsed. So they are deposed from our chitta. Shubha samskars and shubha vichaara, shubha vasana, they are all deposed. Not only that, But the Durbuddhi can really find open field. So these are all not only biological calls, but they have tremendous potentials to eclipse all merits and meritorious qualities in a human being, and on the other hand, they can open out the field for all the aspects of Durbuddhi. So the demonic things get encouraged, demonic dispositions get encouraged by shudha pipasa. So we have to understand the thirst and hunger impulse, or the call of thirst and hunger, in perspective. It is not just we feel thirsty and we take water. Because if you are thirsty and if you don't get water, you can end up becoming even a vandal. You can end up becoming a brute. You are thirsty or hungry. Even if you get hungry, and if your hunger is not quenched, then you can understand how devastating it is, and the demonic forces just play havoc on our mind. So in yoga psychology, this has been deeply investigated. These are not very natural calls. In case they are not attended to, and if they are not answered, we would be totally pauper in our all merits and meritorious qualities. So that's how they are so powerful. So therefore, yoga thinks of conquering these calls. Otherwise, aviveka would be rampant, shadripus would play havoc, kleshas would be dancing up and down our embodiment, viciousness would be blooming and blossoming, and therefore there is a great hazard in this natural impulse of thirst and hunger. So therefore the shamanam of thirst and hunger becomes very important. Particularly in the life of a yogi, yogi cannot be victim of thirst and hunger, cannot allow the tantrums of thirst and hunger. We worldly people, we do not have thirst and hunger for water and food, but we have thirst and hunger for so many things. So the larger picture of thirst and hunger should be understood. It's not that we are thirsty only for water. We are thirsty for so many things, so many material things, so many sensual things. We have thirst and hunger, and therefore the thirst and hunger as a concept is really something that should be one should be dreaded of. Anyway, here Patanjali mentions the pipasa nivrutti as one of the most important endowments that one should be having behind oneself to carry out pursuit of Samadhi. And therefore he says kanthakupeshutpipasa nivrutti. And it is very significant to understand when we are hungry and thirsty, the profile of our throat region is something that should be taken note of. When you are dead thirsty for water, we can understand the profile of the throat. And when you are hungry, you can also understand the profile of the throat. And therefore the kanthakupa is so closely related to thirst and hunger, very biological needs. And therefore, as we just now saw into the Vyasa's commentary, he describes the location of it. And we commoners experience this when we try to settle down for japa and dhyana. We have problems coming from all corners. The legs and feet part getting pins and needles, becoming numb, becoming heavy, getting that pain, whereby we cannot help but we need to release our legs and move our legs. Apart from that, we have the firing coming from our sneezes, our cough. Usually they don't create any botheration, they are not there, but once you settle down for japa and dhyana, you will see that there will be a kind of AK-44 of cough, sneeze, and all sorts of natural things such as yawning, belching. Otherwise they are not there, but you sit for dhyana and japa, all these things come to surface and start erupting like a volcano. And that's how they devastate our sadhanas. And untimely thirst and hunger also starts coming to surface. So there are countless, thousands and thousands of obstructions and impediments when you try to embark upon japa sadhana and dhyana sadhana. Auspicious deeds always have such obstructions. This is the experience of life. But when you are doing ill things, bad things, you don't get obstructed. But you try to do something virtuous, you have lots of obstructions. That means in Shubha karma, you have a lot of vigna. In Dushta karma, it is thornless path. And you can smoothly sail on that path, which is Dushta karma, which is bad deeds. This is characteristic to human life. Anyway, it is important to understand the sutra here, the kanthakupeshutpipasa and pipasa nivrutti. So, it is mentioning some esoteric status of this part, whereby the thirst and hunger are conquered by Yogi. So that is what this sutra is mentioning, which is 3.30. Then another major obstruction in Samadhi sadhana is lack of steadiness. Otherwise our unsteadiness is not noticed by us. But when you are trying to sit for japa, you will get itching sensation here and there, you will get numbness here and there, and you will be in discomfort, and therefore you will like to make movements. You are helplessly making movements of your limbs and body. You can watch a movie steadfastly for 3 hours, but sit for japa and dhyana, 3 minutes is also a long time to be there unobstructed. So this is what is our experience. We can steadily watch a movie and we don't get pins and needles and numbness, etc. But you try to sit for dhyana and japa, you will see the obstructions erupting. Anyway, the other thing is thairyam, this steadiness. We understand the dearth of steadiness potential in us only when we embark upon japa sadhana and dhyana sadhana. Sit for meditation and you will immediately discover the unsteadiness that you have within you, from body plane to mind psyche plane. Everywhere there is unsteadiness. We don't identify the unsteadiness elsewhere, particularly in the vicious acts and acts of recreation, such as reading a novel and watching a movie. We can hours together read a novel, at a stretch 7-8 hours. Give a textbook in the hands. We are over within 15-20 minutes. We cannot be steadfastly reading the textbook for such a long duration, which we can do when we are reading a novel or fiction. So the asthairiam and sthairiam, this pair, duality, is to be understood here. And we understand how yoga has enormous importance to sthairiam. This steadiness not only in the limbs, not only in the body, not only in metabolism, but in senses, mind, psyche, consciousness. And therefore, Patanjali handles this problem that one faces in the path of yoga. So for a yogi, he says, Kurmanadyam sthairiyam. So he speaks about Kurmanadi. Well, while dealing with pranayam, we dealt with some of the nadis, 10 major nadis, Ida, Pingala, Sushumna, etc. Therein we counted even Kurmanadi. So, by Samyama on Kurmanadi, he says, yogi attains that exalted steadiness from body plane to psyche consciousness plane. Now, where is this Kurmanadi? It is Kurmanadi, not the Kurmanadi which we refer to in 10 nadis. Naga Kurma Kurkura Devata Dhananjaya Vayus, and then we also refer to a Kurmanadi. But the Kurma there, this is not that. This is Kurma Kara Nadi. This Nadi has a shape of tortoise. This is clarified by Vyasa in his commentary. So it should not be mistaken. It is not that Kurma Nadi, one of the 10 major nadis which are spoken of by the Hatha Yogic texts, and we did consider them while we were dealing with the pranayam topic. So Vyasa describes Kupat Adaha Urasi Kurmakara Nadi. That means below the Kupa that was seen in the previous sutra, below that is in the Udasi, in the Vakshasthala, in the chest region, Urasthana. Urasthana, Urasi means Urasthana, Urasthana means the chest region. There is Kurmakara Nadi. There is a Nadi in the shape and form of tortoise. Tasyam Kruta Samyamaha Sthirapadam Labate. And by Samyama on that tortoise shaped Nadi, which is in the chest cavity, the Samyama gives the Sthirapadam, Sthairiam, in the limbs of the body, in the senses, in the mind, psyche, consciousness. So, that is what Vyasa is mentioning here. Now, how is this steadiness? Yatha sarpo godaha veti. Like a snake, when hibernating, it is absolutely steady for hours and hours and hours and hours. That is what hibernation is. And we know about hibernation that is there to some of the reptiles, pythons and snakes. So also Godha, a kind of alligator, it has the character of steadiness. That is, because of the power of hibernation, those creatures and animals have that steadiness. The Godha is a kind of reptile that in olden days, when the mountains were scaled, they would be throwing this, and then it would be firmly getting grounded on the mountain slopes, and then the rope tied to it would be used to climb up, and it would not slide. And until last about 300 and 400 years, this was there. This particular kind of reptile was used, that it, once you throw it up on the mountain slopes, it would catch hold of anything there, and it would be so steady that you could climb up the mountain by holding a rope which was tied to that reptile. So that is the steadiness of it. So soldiers would climb up, hundreds of soldiers would climb up using that particular Godha, that kind of reptile, which would be so strongly clinging to whatever is available there. So that's the steadiness they have. As I said about the reptiles like alligators, and aquatics like alligators, and reptiles like the snakes, pythons, they really go to hibernation. So by hibernation they are steady for days and days and days. So that power comes to Yogi, that these systems which have these strong calls, volatile calls, they get the steadiness by core manadi samyama. So that's again esoteric aspect of a esoteric core manadi, which you may not be able to sight through a scan, but it is indeed there, of the shape of a tortoise, and that gives sthairyam. So that is what the Sutra 3.31 tells us about. Again, esoteric location of the embodiment in the chest region, whereby the yogi gets the steadiness everywhere, from extremities of body to core of consciousness. And therefore the Sutra Kurmanadyam Sthairyam. So, as I refer to those 10 nadis, Mahanadis in Yoga Shastra, there is also a Kurmanadi. So this is incidental information that I am giving. And in Prana Sadhana, one is able to identify the Kurmanadi that is mentioned here. And the usage of that Kurmanadi, which a yogi is able to actualize. So it is in Vaksha Pradesha, Vaksha Sthala, or Uro Pradesha. It is in Anahata Sthanam. Incidentally, this happens to be the region of Anahata. It is also worth taking note of. And therefore it is, in a sense, Vridaya Sthaniya Dharana. The Samyama is in the Vridaya Sthanam. So, this is about that Samyama on Kurbanadi. Where is this Kurbanadi? It is in heart region, chest region. And therefore, it is a typical kind of Vridaya Desha Dhyanam, which becomes Samyama. And therefore, this power is attained. Now, the esoteric anatomy tells us that heart region is a region where you have the metaphysical entity of finite self and the universal self, the Ishvara, the Antaryami. Now it has enormous pavitrya and mangalya. And it should be understood in the psychological perspective that when we are in such a shrine, our hungers and thirst are kept at bay. Every kind of hunger and thirst is kept at bay when we are in such holy places, sanctum sanctorums of shrines, because of the pavitrya and mangalya. So the Samyama has something to do with the pavitrya and mangalya, which is of exalted character in the heart region. Because the heart is said to be sanctum sanctorum in our embodiment. It is vasati sthanam. It is place of residence of Ishvara, the Antaryami. And therefore one gets that transcendent state of mind while the dhyana is taking place in the sanctum sanctorum, on the sanctum sanctorum in the human embodiment, whereby the Ishavasya Vritti comes up. So there is inundation of Ishavasya Vritti. So it is a vritti of complete accomplishment, krutarthata, and therefore the Trishna, Vasana, they are all sent out to a remote place, and that's why they cannot trouble, vex the mind. So that's how Kurmanadi also can be understood, because it is in the heart region, Urod Pradesha. And then the Stairyam is Alaukikam, Alaukika Stairyam, out of the world steadiness that one gets by dhyana on the heart region. Therefore the yogi can be in Samadhi for decades and decades and centuries and centuries and centuries and millennia after millennia. It is said that those yogis in Himalayas are seated in Samadhi for such a long duration, number of centuries and number of millennia. It is because of that incredible steadiness that they have, that they can be in Samadhi for such a long duration. So that is what the Stairya has the purport here. So that is what this sutra is mentioning. The next sutra is 3.31, Murda Jyotishi Siddha Darshanam. But we will look into that sutra in our next session. Enough for the time being. Namaskar all of you.